Support WrestleTalk!
Give us a subscribe. Hello and welcome to the WrestleTalk News. I'm Mr. Davis, returning from my hair transplant surgery. That's why I've got a fancy hat, because the top of my head currently looks like Sheamus's chest after a chop battle. Super kick the thumbs up button and give us a subscribe because we've got a huge episode today with the real life feud between Randy Savage and Vince McMahon, Daniel Bryan being edited out of WWE, and two big WWE returns being cut because they've got to make way for the next breakout star in WWE, BLAIR Davenport. Rivaling other genius wrestling names WWE have come up with in the past, like Michael McGillicuddy, Skip Sheffield, and Percy Watson, the promotion have excitedly filed to trademark the wrestling name BLAIR Davenport. I can't wait, but there is only room for one Blair in our hearts. Subscribe to No Rolls Barred. The Davenport name will hopefully be given to one lucky developmental star soon. Or it's Aleister Black's new gimmick. Increasingly becoming a new version of Jimmy Kimmel's "We haven't got time for Matt Damon" joke in the noughties, Ringside News is reporting Aleister Black's new darker character was cut from Friday's episode of SmackDown. Despite him being backstage, a new weekly segment being filmed for him, and WWE being reportedly short-handed for the show. They also cut the planned SmackDown debut of Mia Yim, set to be repackaged following her stint as Reckoning in the faction Retribution, with her return simply being pushed to another week. But despite Black and Yim's segments being cut and two top backstage officials being away, with executive director Bruce Pritchard on vacation and head writer Ed Koskey simply handling something else, Ringside News writes SmackDown went very smooth despite its limited staff, with Triple H taking more control of the show and bringing up producer Dave Kapoor, who's been working on NXT as of late. CGI fist bump for putting on a good show, guys! This is just the latest example of Hunter and his NXT team making their influence felt on the main roster, possibly foreshadowing a time when they're officially given a brand to make their own, with Pritchard rumoured to be overstretched, covering both Raw and SmackDown. Interestingly, from a geeky wrestling media perspective, the super respectable Wrestling Observer has directly corroborated the far more dirt sheet-leaning Ringside News' report, with Dave Meltzer writing in his daily update regarding several Ringside News stories this week. Most are basically true, backing up the Triple H and Aleister Black stories, while noting Yim's debut is now tentatively scheduled for this Friday's episode of SmackDown. Tentatively scheduled, title of WWE's next pay-per-view. Because in one of the most bizarre wrestling stories of the year, WWE just let a WrestleMania 37 closing main eventer's contract run out. Daniel Bryan versus Roman Reigns in a loser leaves SmackDown match for the Universal Championship 2 weeks ago was thought to be nothing more than just a nothing WWE stipulation. Turns out, no. Bryan's contract with the company has legitimately expired, and the Wrestling Observer has claimed he could legally show up next week on AEW if he wants, meaning the 90-day non-compete clause doesn't apply, as that's generally for released wrestlers. And WWE appear to be very aware of this, as they've started editing him out of their videos. Thanks for your support on Patreon, the Kessel Run DX Solo, and he can last Sean for longer than you in the ring. Meltzer added Bryan would probably wrestle for New Japan soon if it wasn't for the country's recent state of emergency due to the pandemic. But the door is still very much open to re-sign with WWE, because the wrestling business right now is just a load of open doors, and many in AEW expect him to go back to Vince anyway. But in Walter's interview with Corey Graves' After the Bell podcast, the NXT UK champion was asked who his dream WWE opponents are, and he answered Cesaro and Daniel Bryan. When I first got into watching wrestling other than WWE, I was watching a lot of Ring of Honor. Those guys are the top guys in WWE right now, so Daniel Bryan would be one of the matches I really wanted to do. But good luck finding that in the YouTube version of the interview, as the part mentioning Ring of Honor and Daniel Bryan have been edited out. It's quite an odd decision to edit a very interesting 20 seconds of answer from a 5-minute video, especially looking at WWE's treatment of Bryan on Friday's SmackDown. The show opened with a fantastic promo from Paul Heyman, where he led Roman Reigns and Jey Uso in a 10-bell salute for Bryan's now finished WWE career. But according to Ringside News, which has also been corroborated by the Wrestling Observer, this was not in the original script, although the idea was 100% approved. Heyman either improvised on the spot or just didn't tell anyone he was going to mention Bryan. Apparently, the segment got a huge positive reaction backstage, precisely because it caught people by surprise. The WWE writing team didn't originally plan to draw so much attention to Bryan legitimately being a free agent. This is speculation and mania on my part, but could the positive reaction to something spontaneous be down to the people running the show and the different culture they provide, i.e. Triple H and his NXT team? McMahon and Pritchard often say they want their stars to make a name for themselves, but then punish them whenever they try. The marks of out-of-touch control freaks. Again, Bryan really is a free agent right now. This is not a work. Ringside News note he's not just been removed as a wrestler, but also from the SmackDown writing team backstage. Although WrestlingNews.co report WWE officials are very hopeful he'll sign a new contract and return soon, which the Heyman off-script segment seems to support. Some of pro wrestling's best moments are when reality and fiction merge. What do you think is going to happen with Daniel Bryan? Let me know in the comments down below, where I'll be replying for the first 15 minutes as soon as this video goes live from out of nowhere. Fantasy booking Bryan returning to SmackDown as BLAIR Davenport. Meanwhile, in Japan,
oh, what happened there?
Rubber band attack.
Rubber band from the top of the cage.
Let's stretch it out.
Wow! Across the entire arena.
Where do you even buy a rubber band that size? That is going to render SB Kento.
Following the divisively received A&D documentary on the life of Randy Savage, with Sean Waltman calling out the episode for going too hard on someone who's not around to defend themselves, with way too much airtime being given to, quote, Bubba the love sponge, Bruce Pritchard has discussed Randy's fractured relationship with Vince McMahon on the latest episode of Something to Wrestle With. While talking about Backlash 2006, Pritchard covered rumors at the time that WWE was considering inducting Savage into the Hall of Fame, while Savage was still alive. Former WWE writer Alex Greenfield had been told not to keep suggesting Randy as a possible inductee, as it would annoy Vince too much, while Gene Okerlund claimed WWE asked Savage many times, but he declined, saying he'd only go in if his brother Lanny Poffo and his father Angelo would be inducted at the same time. George Steele had just said that Vince never got over Savage leaving WWE in the mid-90s. Savage passed away in 2011 and was eventually inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2015, where Pritchard has now said he definitely 100% thinks Randy and McMahon would have made up by then, and Savage would have attended the ceremony in person. Following Jimmy Uso's return on Friday's SmackDown, WrestlingNews.co is reporting the tribal family storyline is mapped out for the next several months, which will result in the Usos winning the tag team titles from a babyface team. This implies the current champions, heels Dolph Ziggler and Bobby Roode, will drop the belts before then, presumably to the first ever father and son title winning team of Rey and Dominic Mysterio. Ringside News adds that Roman's storylines are carefully crafted and they are unlike anything else going in the company. The writing team don't have much input, which is why Heyman's promo likely caught so many by surprise, and the creative process is solely handled by Heyman, Reigns, McMahon, and Michael Hayes, which is the non-writing team approach that has historically worked the best in wrestling. Perhaps John Cena might be Roman's next big opponent, as he's not so cryptically posted a low-res image of the WWE logo on his Instagram. He is also in that picture. Before you get too excited though, John Cena's Instagram page is one of the weirdest places on the internet. Here is a photoshopped picture of comedian John Oliver's face on a bodybuilder's body with John Cena. And here is another of a dog eating popcorn, also with John Cena. And Ringside News is reporting Becky Lynch has recently signed a new WWE deal, pledging her near future to the company. There were plans to have her return at WrestleMania, but those were scrapped. Speaking of Becky Lynch, watch Adam Blompier's brand new wrestling list, 10 amazing wrestling moments that were complete accidents.
Spoiler alert, wrestling matches are planned. I know, I'll give you a few seconds to deal with the fallout of that bombshell. On we go. See, wrestlers are strong. Here's some, and if you don't plan matches, then someone's going to get accidentally punched in the face or dick or worse. But as the well-known Rabbi Burns saying goes, the best laid schemes are mice and men. Sometimes see accidental wrestling happening, and most of the time it's real bad, but occasionally it's lightning in a bottle amazing. Oh, great phrase. Thanks, Rabbi.